chat. Looks like we have several people calling in from Spastpool, several people calling in from Petaluma. I myself am calling in from Santa Rosa today, which I'm sure is similar to a lot of you. Looks really apocalyptic outside, but I'm glad we're all able to make it on this call today. So my name is Christine Byrne. I take she, her pronouns, and I'm an educator with Sonoma Water. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be meeting one of our engineers, one of our awesome engineers that works here at Sonoma Water. And we're also going to be doing an investigation that talks about the relationship or explores the relationship between energy and water. So those two natural resources. And so let me tell you a little bit about Sonoma Water before I hand it over to our engineer. So Sonoma Water has three core functions. One of those functions is water supply, one of those functions is sanitation, and one of those functions is flood prevention. So those are the main three things that Sonoma Water does. And as we all know, water is life. Water is necessary for survival. So Sonoma Water plays one of those key functions for providing water and sanitizing water here in Sonoma County. Sonoma Water is mainly located in, as I said, Sonoma County and also Northern Marin, and is mainly located within this Russian River watershed. That's where we get our water from. Russian River watershed is important for plants, animals, humans in many capacities. Recreation is one of them. I know myself personally, I've spent a lot of time at the Russian River this summer because it's been so hot. I don't know about anyone else. But in addition to that, we take that water from the river. It uses a natural filtration process, and we provide that water for 600,000 people all across Sonoma County and also Northern Marin County as well. And like I said, that land that we operate in is important for plant species, important for animal species and people. And in addition to that is the ancestral homelands for the past 10,000 years of several tribes and several people throughout this area. And so I think it's important to acknowledge the ancestral people, indigenous people who have lived in this land, and also really the painful and traumatic history of colonialization that happened as settlers arrived. So I'm gonna read this tribal land acknowledgement, and please just, you can follow along as well and read along from the screen. Sonoma Water operates on the unceded lands of the Cloverdale Band of Homo Indians, Dry Creek Bands of Homo Indians, Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, Kashaya Band of Homo Indians, Khoi Nation, Lytton Band of Homo Indians, and Mishawal-Wapo tribes. I ask you to join me in acknowledging these tribes' elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. Sonoma Water also acknowledges that the land was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples, including those on whose land Sonoma Water is located. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonization and colonialism. And I'm sure this is something you all have learned about and you all have heard about as well. And if you want to learn more, please reach out to me, please reach out to Sonoma Water, and I'm happy to provide any additional resources for you. All right, next slide. So going back to Sonoma Water and kind of what Sonoma Water does, Sonoma Water has hundreds of employees, and these employees do a range of different tasks. You know, there's people like myself that are educators for Sonoma Water. There's people like Hannah, who's on this call, who's an engineer for Sonoma Water. There's interns who work for Sonoma Water. There's a whole range of different professions and different careers that make sure that we are all provided with high quality water to our homes. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Hannah. Like I said, Hannah is one of our rock star engineers here at Sonoma Water. Hannah's going to be sharing a little bit about what she does for Sonoma Water and also her path and journey for becoming an engineer and arriving here at Sonoma Water. And at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat, and we can either pause and read off the questions as Hannah is sharing, or in addition, we'll have about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes after Hannah is done sharing, for question and answers at that point. So let me go ahead and I will end screen sharing, and then we will turn the screen over to you, Hannah.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so bummed that I can't see any of your faces right now. It's not the same not being in the office. Usually I love, being in front of everybody and learning a little bit about you too. So I hope that everyone's having a great day today. If I'm talking too quickly, please let me know. Christine, I'm relying on you. If you have any questions as I'm going through a little bit about my experience, please feel free to drop them into the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't get to them, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm super happy to help any of you guys. I remember being in your spot not too many years ago, and so I'm very happy to help in any way that I can. So first I'll share a little bit about me and then a little bit about my college experience and just go into a little bit of detail about what I do at Sonoma Water. So my name is Hannah. I grew up in the Central Valley in California in a small town called Turlock, which is a little kind of dairy town, very, very small. Went to middle school there and high school and had a really good time, but was one of those students who always tried really hard but didn't really feel like I was great at anything. I more than got by, usually got A's and B's in my classes, but didn't really have a passion for anything. I knew what I didn't like though. So I knew I was okay at science, okay at math. I could do really well in English, really well in history, but I hated them. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm okay at math and science. Maybe I'll hack it and become a dentist. I'll be the nice one that uses the scented gloves, gives out candy at the end. It was going to be great. So that was kind of my game plan going into high school. I'm not sure if any of you guys had the same experience, but it seemed like as soon as I hit that 9th grade age, everyone was like, so what do you want to be when you're older? And it was like, I don't even know. I just got my braces off, I wasn't ready for the questions. So kind of went through high school until I was a junior, just thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be a dentist. I'm going to go to like a UC and do the medical thing. And just like a lot of my other, a lot of the other kids in my classes. But something just didn't really feel right. It didn't feel like it would be a good decision for me. So when I was a junior, my dad and I sat down and we had a talk, and he's like, there are some really good opportunities at some state schools. And I found this thing called Summer Engineering Experience that you could go to. It's hosted by women, and it's basically a week-long engineering camp. You'll go there, you'll shadow them, see what they do. They do all sorts of different engineering disciplines. They work in different disciplines, and you might like that a little bit better than like going biomed. And so I was open to it. So I said, sure, why not? I didn't have that much to do in high school anyways. And so it was the summertime, so I went to that summer engineering experience and met all of these amazing women, and they were so smart, they were so kind, and they were all these amazing problem solvers. We went to a facility, and one of them built a pump in front of me, which was incredible. And then another one was a computer engineer. I just thought they were amazing. And after that week-long experience, I decided this is what I want to do. I didn't know exactly what, but I knew that I wanted to be someone who helped other people and solved really hard problems that not everyone else could solve. So went back into high school, entering my senior year, was super jazzed about it, met with one of my math professors, and I sat down with her and I said, hey, I just got done with this amazing experience. I think I want to go into engineering, but I need your help. I earned an A in my last math class. Will you please let me take my calculus class so I can put that on my college applications? And, I didn't think it would be too big of a deal because I had earned my A in that class, but I had to work really hard, and she had seen me work hard. But I was hoping that she would just say, yes, I'd love to have you in this calculus class. But she said no. She said, Hannah, I'm so sorry, but I don't think you can handle calculus. You're going to have to do math analysis instead. And I said to her, well, professor, like, why can't you pass me? I earned an A in this class. Like, wasn't that good enough? And she goes, well, I know how much you struggled with that, and I just don't think you can handle it. So my senior year, I didn't get to take calculus, which for most of you, I'm sure you're like, why are you complaining? Calculus is such a hard class. But for me, I was devastated because I had finally found something I was interested in. I had asked my professor for help, and she didn't help me. She told me that she didn't think that I could handle something that I was super excited to try. And so that was really a discouraging thing for me. And now, granted, not all professors are like that. I had amazing professors in life, but that was one of those moments in life where I had to stick my foot in the ground and say, I'm interested in this. I want to try it. Even though you're telling me you don't think that I'm going to be great at it, I still want to try it. I want to do it. There's lots of other people in myself that believe that I can do this thing that I'm trying to do. So I ended up getting through high school. I didn't get into the calculus class because she wouldn't let me, but I worked really hard to keep all my grades up, and I applied to some colleges. I did a lot of UC applications, which was fine, but very expensive. And I've got younger siblings, so that was always kind of out of reach for my family. I knew that I needed some sort of financial support to be able to afford to go to college. And so my dad, again, we sat down again. He goes, hey, that summer camp that you went to last year, they have a scholarship where you could get a full ride to study engineering. Why don't you try for it? So I said, okay, and all I had to do was write a few essays and submit a little application. And it was worth tens of thousands of dollars because I got the scholarship and ended up going to school for free, which was amazing. So that was probably the best 1 or 2 days that I spent, when you consider how much work I put into it with the huge payback of getting all my tuition paid for. So anywho, that was amazing. The school that I ended up going to is Fresno State. They have an amazing engineering program there. They have amazing mentors, amazing professors. Can't say enough good things about it. I got into college, moved into Fresno State, into the dorms, and started kind of putting my schedule together and decided to start off with some GE classes, which means general education, and kind of started taking those classes, enjoyed them, but they were pretty easy except for the math class, which was still hard because math is just hard. You just have to work at it. That's normal. But kept taking my classes, and my grandma, she calls me and she goes, Hannah, have you figured out what kind of an engineer you want to be? And I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, well, there are more than just one type of engineer. There are a few different types and a few different things that you could study. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, well, under the engineering umbrella, there are a few different types. There's civil engineering. And what civil engineers do is they design roads, bridges, they'll treat water, do water distribution systems, and they'll do geotechnical work. So stuff with the soil, they'll build structures. They do all of that stuff. And then there's mechanical engineers, and they deal with stuff that moves. So cars, heating and air conditioning systems, they do stuff like that. And then there's electrical engineers, and they deal with stuff that you can't see, electricity, but that has a big impact on how we live today. So, and then there's computer engineers who write software and do coding. They'll write the stuff that basically makes the back end of the video game, if you will. And so I said, well, I'm not so interested in computer engineering. I'm not really a video gamer. I don't think I'd be very good at that. The mechanical, I don't know, but civil engineering, that sounds great. And electrical engineering sounds interesting, but I'd really like to learn about civil engineering and water resources. So I decided that that's what I would do. So I took all of these classes in civil engineering, and my emphasis was in water resources. So my Bachelor of Science degree that I earned was in civil engineering with an emphasis in water resources. So when I graduated after 4 years and a little bit of summer school, so even though I worked really hard in school, but sometimes school is just really hard and classes are hard and you have to retake them. It's very normal. Don't get discouraged. I had to do that with a few classes, but you'll get through it and it'll be worth it. You just got to finish what you started. So that's what I did. Ended up graduating with that degree. And what I learned in college was how to design water systems to transport water from one location to another. So kind of like Christine had talked about, a lot of our water comes from the Russian River. And in order to take that water from the Russian River and get it into your sink, it has to travel through a bunch of different pipes. Sometimes we have to put pumps in between. Sometimes when we pull the water out of the ground, there's stuff that we don't want in it, little chemicals where we have to add different chemicals to pull that out of the water and treat it so that it's drinkable. So that's the stuff that I learned in college, and I love water resources engineering. Everybody needs water. I felt that it was something that I could do for the rest of my life. I would be making a positive difference and solving really interesting problems. So graduated, started applying for jobs. So I graduated in May. A little before I graduated in March, I applied for a bunch of different jobs. You know, you just got to throw the line out there and see which fish bites. So got 5 job offers, which was amazing that so many people were interested. But one that really caught my eye that I had applied for was the energy resources engineer position at Sonoma Water. And the reason why it interested me was because it was a combination of civil engineering, so the water resources side, treating and pumping and delivering water, and the electrical side. So if we know that we have to get water from point A to point B, and we need a pump to do that so that we can increase the flow and increase the pressure in that pipeline, what kind of pump do we need, and how can we supply the power to make that system work and make that pump the water? So I said, that sounds really interesting. I'm just going to try for it. So interviewed for the position, ended up getting the job offer, and was brought on board, moved from Fresno to Sonoma County, which was a big change, but super fun. It's good to try new things, and started working for the water agency. And so now what I do is I manage and design projects that are related to delivering water or treating wastewater. So I have a background in civil engineering, but when I started at the water agency, my boss that I worked for said, Hannah, you have an amazing opportunity here to not only become a professional civil engineer, which is an additional license that you get after you graduate with work experience and passing a test. So you could do that for civil engineering, but you could also get your electrical engineering license. Are you interested in that? And I said, yes, I'm totally interested in that. It sounds like a unique pairing. Water engineering combined with power engineering is an amazing thing. And not many people that I've met can do that. So why not do that? It seems like it'll give me a good edge. So I went ahead and did that. So for the past few years, I've been working as a water and power engineer. Just got my engineering license in electrical engineering, and do a bunch of different really amazing projects. So right now we work on renewable energy projects. So we went out and constructed a bunch of solar panels at one of our water treatment facilities. And we do that because in order to treat water, you need a lot of power to power the machines that process the water. So we use the power generated by those solar facilities to power the machines that treat the wastewater. So that's kind of where I fall into the mix, is just making sure that we have the power that we need. If we can get it by using renewable energy resources, that's always what we do first. And then just everything in between. So going out to a system, taking a look at what's out there and figuring out how to improve it. So what that means day to day, it's a really nice schedule, you guys. Most of the time I get to sit here, I talk with a lot of people, I manage consultants who do specialized portions of design. So if I need someone to write a software program for a project that I'm working on, then I will hire someone to do that, bring them on board, and work with them to make sure that their program is going to work well with the equipment and the system that I'm designing. So it's a lot of emails, a lot of meetings, which I love because I love talking with people and meeting with them. And then it's just a lot of technically challenging questions. So there's always something that doesn't quite fit perfectly, and you really get to think outside the box. You have to think about solutions that are going to be cost effective, something that's going to last for 30 years. You have to think about something that's going to be easy for people to maintain. And then you have to take that, put it on paper, and then make sure that it gets built correctly. And we do that by helping out when the project's being constructed. We'll go out on site, take a look at what the contractor is building, and help them to make sure that they're building what we intended them to build. So it's a really interesting job. I'd really encourage all of you guys to take a look into engineering. It's been an amazing career. There's a lot of job stability. You can make a really good living doing engineering. It's very enjoyable. So I would just encourage you to take a look into engineering. And then I think that's just about it. Just a couple of other personal little tips and tricks that help me that Christine asked about. When you guys go out into the workplace, always make eye contact with people and make sure that you have a really good handshake. That goes a really long way. If you ever have an interview with somewhere or someone, make sure that you take your resume to your career center at school and ask them to help you format it and build your content out. They're there to help you. So make sure that you ask them for help. Ask your teachers to take a second look at what you prepare. And then once you go and interview, after you're done, make sure you take down the people's names that you're interviewing for, the people who are interviewing you, take down their names and write them a handwritten thank you note. Those little tricks have gotten me a long way. So those are some of the best tips and tricks that I've got. That's a lot about my experience. Hopefully it helped and encouraged some of you guys. Any questions, Christine?
Oh, well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story about becoming an engineer and also what you do day to day. It's super inspiring for me to hear.
Of course.
It does look like we have a few questions in the chat.
Sure.
So this is one question. It says, due to the fires, would the dropping of the fire retardants affect our fresh water supply? And then follow-up questions. Is there a possibility of those retardants draining back into the clean water source? And then also, or are the precautions set in place to protect us?
Great question. So I know a little bit about this. We actually have a group in Sonoma Water that monitors all of our water and will go out and assess the impact that these fires have on the groundwater supply. So they go out, they take samples, and they'll keep an eye on things to make sure that if there is an impact that the fire retardant has on the quality of the groundwater, that we know how to mitigate that impact and make sure that it's not going to be harmful to anyone. So that's my 2 cents. Christine, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. There are people on the ground. In fact, it's quite large teams on the ground right now of federal workers, state workers, local workers, Sonoma Water, all working together to basically make a fire plan or a post-fire plan to make sure that we keep our water supply really safe. So there are a lot of amazing engineers and also resource specialists on the ground doing this work all the time. Another question about the fire. Can you tell us in closer detail, one sec, let me scroll up. Can you tell us in closer detail the steps and phases workers took to save the reservoir from the fire?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know too much about it, so I can't speak a lot to the steps, aside from the fact that we really emphasize management of the forest in and around our water areas. So where we pull water from, our reservoirs, and then also our groundwater areas, we like to make sure that the brush is cleared. If there's less brush, there's less fire potential. So believe it or not, a lot of the mitigation activities, and mitigation just means making sure that something bad doesn't happen. So a lot of the ways that we do that is preemptively by giving people the resources and the tools to protect the watershed. So we teach them about how to manage their lands. I think actually this year, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a herd of goats that we had on site whose job was to eat the brush to make sure that our fire hazard was reduced. So sometimes it's just practical stuff like that. You know, bring in some animals and have them manage it for you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the one other thing I would add is, so there's a lot of things that happen before to make sure the watershed is as safe as possible when fires do come through. And then the other thing that happened after the 2017 Tubbs fire is Sonoma Water, in collaboration with other agencies, put in a system called One Rain. This system basically is real-time, constant data about a whole range of different things, including rainfall in certain areas all over Sonoma County, including soil moisture content, including temperature, including how much water is in the reservoirs, basically collecting data all the time. And the real reason that system was put in place is because it is a real concern after wildfires, when the rains come, which they inevitably will come, which is a good thing, because on one hand, it will hopefully put out the fires, and also a challenge on the other hand, because if too much rain comes too quickly, what that means is it could cause erosion, landslides, mudslides. So this is a concern for both residents, a concern for their homes, and also the water supply in general. And especially for some of our endangered species that live in the Russian River and its tributaries, like the coho salmon, Chinook salmon. So that's why this One Rain system is in place, is so that we can have up-to-date constant monitoring to see if there is too much rain falling too quickly, if we need to go out in the field and make really quick adjustments in order to, mitigate potentially detrimental or large rainstorms. So that's kind of another thing the water agency has put in, or Sonoma Water's put in place in order to help with fire management. Here's another question. What happens if a water supply does get polluted by the fires or other pollutants? Is it completely useless, or is there a protocol that is carried out for someone to clean and try to restore it? If you can't fix it, how long would it take for the water supply to be safe or to find another way to get water?
It's a good question. So most of the water that we pull comes from the Russian River, and it's naturally filtered by the gravel. So what happens is basically these materials that are inside of the actual sand and earth, they have these little pores in them, and any chemical or contaminant in the water will kind of get sucked up into the pores of that natural, what we call media, which is the sand and the gravel. And so to date, we haven't had many issues with needing to treat water because it's been contaminated. The most that we do typically is just chlorinate it. But I would say that I think where you'd see more of that is on the private property owner level for Sonoma County. If someone has like a well and their property got burned out and they're seeing some issues with contamination, you can bring a water engineer on board to help you identify the chemistry of your water and figure out how to treat it. So that's how I would go about it.
Yeah, that's great. Here's a question from Abby. What happens to the solid waste after the water is treated?
Great question. So this is a good question. So with our wastewater processes, which this is a great tour to take once everything hopefully, shifts to a new equilibrium where you can come and take tours. We have these amazing wastewater treatment facilities. Basically what happens is wastewater from your toilet, so you flush your toilet, the water goes down the sewer pipes and it gets collected at one of our wastewater treatment facilities. All of the stuff that makes wastewater, so like the stuff that goes in the toilet, if you have infiltration from like what gets rained on the ground and collected in the sewer systems, all of that stuff creates what we call sludge. So there are processes and ways that you can take all of those, like the turbid, which is just cloudy parts of wastewater, and you can settle them out. And you can do that just a bunch of different ways. But what we do, I believe, is we aerate. But basically the byproduct, when you split wastewater, you get something called sludge, and then you get like a low quality water. And that sludge, we take it and we press all the water out of it into what's called a sludge cake, which is your word of the day. And we take that sludge cake and we dispose of it at a facility that is meant to handle that sort of waste. So sludge cakes.
That's awesome and it's really funny. I have not heard that term yet, so sludge cakes is definitely the term of the day for me as well. Here's a question. Because of the fires, does Sonoma County Water see the need to have additional backup fresh water supply in Sonoma County?
Great question. So, at least speaking from what I've seen, how we respond to things, the first thing that we do when there is some sort of a warning or a threat to our water, if that's, a wildfire, for instance, is we talk to the people that we deliver water to and we ask them to conserve. So for you guys, when you know that there's a big risk of fire, the best thing you can do is keep that faucet closed. Take a shorter shower, because that means that on our end, we can keep our tanks fuller just in case they're needed to fight fires. So that's always the first thing that we do. And then the second thing that we do is we talk to the other cities and towns in the area and we'll see what they have and we kind of balance our water supplies. But until you can figure out where the water is needed, it's really hard to kind of plan for an event. So we've got facilities and water tanks all over Sonoma County, and we'll try to keep all of those tanks full by reducing the demand on the customer end, and then also by just pumping a little bit more water out of the river. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess I would just add that I don't know if any of you folks have ever been to like Taylor Mountain or Spring Lake and seen some of those like big giant water storage tanks there. So Sonoma Water has dozens of those water storage facilities all over Sonoma County. And I believe we are able to store 130 million gallons of water in those tanks alone. So just to echo what Hannah said, is during the Walbridge fire, the Sonoma Water came out and said, please conserve water because we need it for firefighting. And our constituents, or the people that live in Sonoma County and get water, did an amazing job conserving water. And so we were actually able to lift that conservation ask. And simultaneously, we were conserving water in those water tanks and preserving those 130 million gallons. Mm-hmm. Carrie is asking, have you seen major changes in water supply due to climate change?
That is a great question. Let's see. We've seen, I would say from my perspective, which Christine, I'd love to hear yours as well. We've seen a shift in the demand. So we do a really good job of managing what comes in so we can make sure that we can manage that well, store it well, treat it well. So from that end, I'd say the impact, I couldn't speak to it, but on the other end of, climate change and seeing the impacts, I'd say we're seeing a lot of wildfires and a lot of droughts. And so on that end, I think is where we're more impacted. We try to handle what we get responsibly, but on the other end of needing to provide additional water because of droughts and wildfires, that's really where we feel it the most. What do you think, Christine?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then I guess the one other thought that I'm having about that is often now when we are receiving water, rainstorms, we're receiving it in large water events called atmospheric rivers. And so that is the direct result of climate change, is as opposed to receiving a small amount of moisture over the course of the entire winter, when we are receiving a rainstorm, it's a large rainstorm, which often doesn't fill up our reservoirs as well because that water just washes off the mountains more quickly as opposed to filling up reservoirs. And that also goes back to the concern of, erosion, especially erosion and mudslides in areas that have been impacted by wildfire. So it's really the type of rain that we're getting now, or the type of water that we're getting is impacting the water supply. Mm-hmm. Question is, can establishing new treatment facilities affect the Russian River wildlife?
Well, our treatment facilities are very simple. So we have drinking water, which is what we call potable water. And that is just treated with chlorine. We are by law required to treat that water with chlorine. So that's really an easy thing to do. It's just a little line and they just put a little bit of chlorine in. So that's very low impact. On the flip side, when you talk about treating wastewater, we don't have, as far as I know, too many plans for expansion of our existing wastewater treatment facilities. I know there's a few things that are going on with trucking and things, but I don't know too many details about those, but I haven't heard of any plans of expanding the wastewater facilities. Have you, Christine? Yeah.
No.
Typically
Okay.
they're designed with like fluff space. So there's a little bit of extra room. What you think you're coming in, there's a little extra room so they could handle a little bit more than that. It's called dry weather and wet weather flows. And so it's different depending on the time of year. So they have some increased additional capacity should we need it.
Nice. All right, here's another question. Are there any plans for groundwater recharge?
You know, I think in Sonoma we have one well where we're doing groundwater recharge, but I don't know exactly what is happening with that. If anyone has any specific questions about it, I'd be happy to get them in contact. I think that's Marcus Trada's group who's doing the recharge. It's in the town of Sonoma.
Hannah, would you mind explaining what groundwater recharge is?
Sure. So what it is it's basically, so the big picture, how a well works is you have a pump and it goes down into the ground like a straw and it sucks water up and delivers it to a storage facility or, your house. Groundwater recharge is the opposite of that. So instead of taking water out, you just put water back. And what it does is it kind of goes through and seeps into the ground and recharges what we pulled out. So that's the big picture.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure, yeah.
Are there any further questions? All right, well, once again, I just want to give you a huge thank you, Hannah. I feel like I learned a ton from your presentation as well, so thank you so much. I see some round of applause, hands happening on the screen as well. So,
well, thank you guys. Any questions? I'm happy to help. Thank you, Christine.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna bring it on back to screen share. So Hannah already talks about this, but really that question is, how is our tap water connected to energy? And I think Hannah did a really amazing job explaining the connection between those two things. And it's really twofold, right? So first off, water can be used to make electricity, and that's called hydroelectricity. And that's some of what we do here in Sonoma County is we do make some electricity at our reservoirs at Lake Sonoma and also Lake Mendocino as well. And in addition, really it takes a lot of electrical energy to move water and to also clean water in addition. And here in Sonoma County, we have 88 miles of pipes that transport this water from our wells to the cities of Santa Rosa, Rohnert Park, Cotati, Petaluma, all over the place. Now, not all cities in Sonoma County are served by Sonoma Water. So some places, for example, Sebastopol actually has their own water agency that supplies their water. And like Hannah was sharing as well, wastewater is one of those other things that requires electricity or energy to sanitize and clean the water and to make those sludge cakes, as Hannah shared. And luckily here at Sonoma Water, about almost a decade ago now, Sonoma Water began to think about ways to make a more sustainable water supply system. And so I'm happy and proud to say that at this point in time, and starting back in 2015, I believe, all of the water that is delivered and sanitized here from Sonoma Water is actually 100% renewable. So we call it carbon-free water. So we have solar energy, we have hydroelectric energy, we have wind energy, and a few other dams as well. And so all of those renewable energy sources are making it so that you get water to your sink or to your shower or to your home every single day. And so with the rest of our time together, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be answering two essential questions. And the first question is, how much water do you use when you take a shower? So we're going to be doing a water audit. And the second thing we're going to be answering is, how much energy does it take to get that water to your shower? So really, once again, thinking about water use and also energy use at the same time. The way this is going to work is, first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do a water audit using a flow rate bag. And I know some of you hopefully were able to pick up these flow rate bags from the library. Others of you might not have a flow rate bag, but you can hopefully and ideally use the data from other people that end up being your group. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to check for any leaks in your shower. So you're going to use a dye tablet to basically show if there's water leaking from the tank into the toilet itself. And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to crunch some numbers. And we're going to calculate the amount of energy it takes to transport that water. The main way we're going to be figuring out the calculations and how much energy it takes to transport water. So we're going to be using data from Sonoma Water about millions of gallons transported to different cities in Sonoma County, and also how many kilowatt hours or how much electrical energy it takes to transport those millions of gallons. Now, I know some of you said you were calling in from Sebastopol today, and actually Sebastopol is not on the list of cities that are served by Sonoma Water. So instead, what I'm asking is take the data or use the data today from Santa Rosa, just because it's a central location. I know some people were calling in from Petaluma, so you can use the data of millions of gallons and kilowatt hours from Petaluma. The way this is all going to work is there's a Google Doc worksheet that you can access at bit.ly Sonoma Water. And this worksheet you're going to need to make a copy of to make it an editable version for yourself. And then working as a team, you're going to have to read carefully through all the directions and fill out and complete this worksheet together. Now, some of your data or some of your answers might be different because some people I know are calling in from Petaluma, some people are calling in from Santa Rosa. So your answers might end up being a little bit different in the end, which is totally fine. So without further ado, what I'm going to be doing in a moment is I'm going to be splitting everyone into groups of 3. They're going to be randomly selected because I don't know any of you. And within your group, you're going to be working to complete this worksheet, like I said. Before I do that, I am wondering if there are any questions from folks. I will also drop the link to the worksheet in the chat in a moment. So any questions before we break out? And then also, I'll be dropping that link in the chat. And just so folks know, myself and the other educators on this line will be hopping in and out of groups to offer support. So we'll just be popping around.